Andre and vanilla. There's water at the front if you're doing that yourself, and John is doing an event with someone else with Kangen, so if anyone wants to speak to him about Kangen, he's actually out there, it's handy. So can you see that okay? Great. So today I'm going to be talking about sports nutrition for the athlete. As a lot of you know, I'm Andrea. Originally I trained as a pharmacist. Then I went and studied nutrition. I also studied sports nutrition, and I'm a member of the Royal Society of Medicine. I also do my best to try and exercise as regularly as possible. My brother Alistair back here dragged me up the mountain yesterday, and you're lucky I'm walking at all today. But I do constantly try and keep on top of the research. I have my head in the book all the time, and every time I write a lecture I think I'm there. I'm like, yeah, I've got my lecture done now, I can just keep rolling it out. But invariably I find more to add and more to add, so the lecture starts to grow and grow and grow. So like I was saying, even this week I was reading more about hydration and electrolytes and sugars in endurance. Very, very interesting. But I do touch on other fields, like a lot of the work that I do is actually in the area of chronic health. I'm quite passionate about chronic fatigue, gastrointestinal problems. I have a little bit of a fascination about nutrition for beauty and skincare as well, and the whole energy side of healing I'm very much involved with. I've been very blessed along my journey working with people. When I moved back to Ireland after 9 years in England, and I started out in sports nutrition, one of my mom's friends was very insistent that I attended an art gallery opening, and I was like, oh no, and she's like, write your letter all about yourself, and I was like, oh, I had no choice, I had to say yes. So I ended up at an art gallery opening giving my little letter about myself to Jared Hartman, and it turns out that he was my first, and then Sonia Sullivan was my second client. So I have been very blessed with the work that I've done. So that's Sonia there. It was a great experience working with her, and a very thoughtful person. She sent me a card for the Olympics, which I thought was lovely because that will always mean a lot to me, and I have that. Jared as well wrote to me when he was in Athens. That was 2004, was it? Yeah. I've worked with Paul, I've worked with Derval, I've worked with Gillian. Gillian was very interesting to work with. She's a race walker, but she was very, very sick with chronic fatigue when she came to me, so I really got to apply everything when I was working with Gillian, and that was just an article that she wrote about her recovery from chronic fatigue and her work with me. I've worked with several of the Paralympic athletes, including Patrice, and they train just as hard as the regular athletes. Very interesting working with them because they have a whole other host of health challenges to deal with as well, not only their training and recovery. I worked with Munster for 4 years, which was fun, interesting, when you're asked what a teaspoon is sometimes by the lads. I've worked with many GAA teams, the Clare, Galway, Westmeath, and recently Westport. I've worked with actually 2 or 3 people that I've rowed the whole way across the Atlantic in the Woodvale. Sean was one of those athletes, and I've also worked with Paul Gleason and Tori. They did it as a couple, and fascinating listening to especially Sean's story. I do believe he's going to have a book out at some point documenting his experiences out there. But when I was working with him, a lot of it was getting his fitness up, but also his weight, so that he had something to lose while he was out on the water, just in case the worst happened. And he actually ran about 4 weeks over his due date of arriving to land, to shore, so he did run out of food. He lost about, I'd say, 1 stone to 2 stone. I hardly recognised him when he came back. Do you know Sean?
Yeah, I know quite well, actually.
It was amazing the difference in him physically when he came back, but he ran into nutritional deficiencies because he ran short of food, which led to vitamin C deficiency. So he actually developed scurvy from a lack of vitamin D, and it affected his joints. So that was really interesting to see, because it's not something that we'd ever really experienced in our modern day. But yeah, it sounded incredible, his journey. Worked with Gordon. Gordon is diligent with his nutrition, and also such a nice guy. I was giving a lecture last year to the schools team in Glenstall, and I texted Gordon the day before, and I said, Gordon, would you mind giving me just a couple of words to inspire the players? And he was straight back with a response, which is massive for a young rugby player to be able to read something about their hero, talking about how important sports nutrition is. So Gordon works very, very hard with his nutrition, and he continues to do so. And as you can read here, he sees that it's all the difference with him having a long career and keeping his body fit and healthy. I've worked with Owen. Again, he's absolutely diligent with his nutrition and his training. He was just very unlucky in the last Olympics. He was the first to find out that it was a little bit on the shallow side for doing the manoeuvre that he wanted to do, which was heartbreaking to watch. We've worked with the FAI. They had a top coaching convention here in Ireland, and I was asked to speak more on the management side of nutrition for the players. That was interesting and incredibly nerve-wracking. This is just a normal person, Mark. He goes to the gym, trains very hard, and in 3 weeks it just shows you what you can do to transform your body when you start to tighten up your nutrition. He's actually in much, much better shape again than this because he's continued to do everything regarding his nutrition, and he's a student and he has to do that on a budget, so it just goes to show that it is possible. Oh, that's helpful. Hold on. Gremlins on the computer this morning. So I spent quite a year or two working with the Athletics High Performance team as well, where I worked directly with their manager, and we decided on their nutrition strategy every year individually for the athletes. And that's the highest level I've really gone to with an organisation, because we strategized their budget individually for the athletes, which was great. But they then decided to no longer do that when another manager came in, which was disappointing for the athletes. I've worked with the lightweight rowers. I think that was for the 2008 Olympics, and the lightweight women, some of the Irish sailors and the junior sailors. Limerick Swimming Club have got me involved several times talking to their athletes, and I have to say they're really smart cookies. And you know when the youngsters start asking you questions that they're paying attention, so I was really impressed by them. Like I said, some of the rugby players. So why should we eat healthily? Well, there's a lot more to just eating well. It has huge effects on your health for life. But what's important to look at also when you're considering your performance as an athlete is that there are several foundations that I believe you really need to have in place before even you're looking at your training, and that would be your health, your sleep, your mindset and your beliefs. That's one of the major differences that I see in athletes that are successful. They have a huge belief that they're going to perform well, and they don't necessarily shout out about it, but they have that there, and I think that's a huge factor in their performance on the day. The nutrition and nourishment, which is actually the absorption of your food, we have to have a really well-functioning digestive system to absorb the food that we're eating. Our hydration is incredibly important, and then our training and recovery. So all of these other things are the platform to us getting the most out of our training so that our bodies can actually do the adaptation that we're asking it to do. So we can't expect to get 100% from our training without respecting our health, and that includes the mind and body. But we also need to look at the quality of our training, not just the quantity. Recovery is incredibly important. Our type of training, so we need to get a balance of everything, and even when we're looking at endurance, it's very important that we work on our strength work, our core, functional work and flexibility. Recovery, a top coach sort of had a little pie chart of our training and rest recovery balance, and we'd say it's nearly 50-50. It's important not to be training day in, day out. Your body does the magic of adapting when you're resting, as opposed to when you're pushing yourself all the time. So complete recovery is very important. Mental training, visualization, that's a field that's growing and growing. But it's very important before each event to visualize how successful it's going to go for you, and visualizing the event and everything about it. But when you're visualizing it, it's the feeling of that you tune into. How do you feel? Sleep is important in managing our stress levels. A lot of the top athletes are incredibly chilled. I don't know if you've noticed that, because they're saving their energy also for the important parts of life and their training. With a lot of athletes that I work with, we do a medical assessment and we do regular biochemistry screening, which means looking at bloods. In fact, even for normal people, I recommend getting bloods done at least once to twice a year, and having someone who's good at interpreting bloods look at them, because a lot of the time the doctors are missing some of the really important things in there, like iron might be slightly on the low side, B12 might be slightly on the low side, white blood cells might be slightly skewed, and a lot of the time they tell us that everything's perfect, but there are actually little things in there that I would notice telling me that someone isn't 100% healthy. So I do think it's important if you can, to get your bloods done. Have someone look at them and get a copy yourself. And I know sometimes the secretary will be like, oh, that's a bit unusual, why do you want them? Well, you have a right to them, you're the patient. Physiological testing will be done on a lot of athletes, so I'll read the results through with them and take them into account with their strategies. Nutrition. So when you're working on your diet, what you need to do is find what works for you. It's individual, and when you start to find what's really working for you, try to ignore what everyone else is doing, because we'll start to keep changing what we're doing and we start to get very confused. So remember that it's individual for each person. Being consistent with your nutrition, and then looking at, the further advanced you get, then we start timing things around training, and then timing things within the training cycle, which would be called periodization. Then we look at sports supplements and strategy, keeping things as simple as you need with what really, really works, and then phasing all of that into your training cycle. And then after each season, breaking it down and going, well, did it work? What didn't work? What was wasting my time? What needs to improve? This is just a couple of research clips just showing how important nutrition is, because a lot of people forget that we are what we eat, and that nutrition helps our body work. So there was one study done at the top which was basically showing that the quality of our nutritional intake plays a critical role in the response to training and athletic performance. So when we're training, we're asking our bodies to change at a genetic and a cellular level, and it's our nutrition that helps permit that happen. So if we don't have the vitamins, the minerals, the antioxidants, the amino acids, the healthy fats, it can't make that positive response. So the diet is very, very important. The second study then was showing that the evidence is accumulating that nutrient supplementation can serve as a potent modulator of many of the acute responses to both endurance and resistance training. In other words, what we're eating is helping around that narrow window of our training and helping us get a positive response from that. And then the last study here is showing that it's very important to maximise with nutrition the recovery and adaptation that occurs in all rest periods, such that recovery before the next training session is complete. So part of the reason for recovery is actually to prepare us for the next training session. Another one here was looking at antioxidants, and when athletes weren't getting enough antioxidants in, it was increasing the inflammatory response they were getting from training. And I would say that most athletes aren't getting in enough antioxidants because it takes a hell of a lot of effort to try and get that amount in. Then there were some studies done on the branched-chain amino acids, which are leucine, isoleucine, and valine, and they were showing that they were improving signaling in the body, which essentially is meaning it's signaling the body to make positive changes. And again, there's another study here looking at branched-chain amino acids, and it was showing that they were activating key enzymes in protein synthesis after physical exercise. And a lot of endurance athletes forget about protein and feel it's all about carbohydrate, but this is just showing that we need to get in our amino acids as well when we're doing endurance. So other benefits of a healthy diet, well, emotionally it keeps us better balanced, because our nutrition is important for our neurotransmitter balance. We also tend to see in athletes that they have less injuries and they rehabilitate faster. And when I was working with the Munster team, I used to find that really interesting, because often you'd have two guys with the same injury. They'd go in and they'd have a shoulder reconstruction done, and at one time I had one guy who was desperate with his diet and I couldn't get through to him to improve it, and I had another athlete who wanted to do everything to rehabilitate, and there was like a whole month in the difference. Now, that's not a clinical study, but I found it interesting, and I believe it is down to your nutrition. How else is your body going to heal? We tend to see asthma and allergies improve or even completely resolve, and there are other strategies we can bring in to address that. And we see better stress tolerance, because when we have better levels of vitamins and minerals and magnesium, for example, we don't tend to see as augmented a stress response. We see better sleep. We tend to hold our fitness more easily. We see improved body composition, so our body comp tends to just go to optimal naturally when we're eating a good diet without focusing on it as much. So this slide is a little bit more about how I look at health from a holistic level, and I believe it's related to all of these things. So when I'm talking about environment, I'm talking about everything that's around us. So the quality of our air, the quality of our water, the quality of our food, whether there's pollution in our water. It's all about the environment that we live in. And then when I'm talking about our inherent defense system, if we're really good, strong and healthy, our body is better able to deal with the daily onslaught that we get from our environment. For example, if we are strong in our bodies and there's a lot of viruses going around, we don't tend to pick them up. Physical function, which would be how the body is working. So we're healthy when everything is working optimally within our bodies. Our health is related to the food and the beverages that we consume, so it's important to keep them as healthy as possible. And when I talk about nourishment, then it's what we're absorbing from that food. Our emotions and how we interpret and react to life. The people in our life. So I think it's important, if we find that we're drained or we have a lot of energy suckers around us, that we can limit them as much as possible and keep the really positive people around us. Now, it's not possible 100% of the time, but I do believe we can keep ourselves in a better space. Our soul path, so finding our place in life, what feels right for us, what keeps us happy. Exercise, finding quiet time, finding inner peace amongst the chaos. I think that's very important for our health. Love, connection and self-worth. How we talk to ourselves is very, very important, especially when we're unwell, and having beliefs that we can get better. Our environmental awareness, so doing what we can to minimise our toxic body burden, because unfortunately we are living in a toxic world. Our spirituality, which is our own individual belief system. The media and advertising industry, we are bombarded, and I think that last clip with the panorama on sports drinks just goes to tell us how powerful the media and advertising industry is, because there is very little proof on sports drinks. Having variety and learning to accept and let go. So it's basically taking control back for ourselves. So this is the slide that I have in another health lecture, where it's just to give people an idea of what we perceive that heals, which would be medicine, radiation, chemo and surgery. But these are all the things here that we're not told about that can bring our health down. So it's important that we educate ourselves in all of these areas. How healthy is our food? How healthy are the cosmetics and toiletries that we're using in our house, on our skin? How healthy the beverages are that we're drinking. Agrochemicals, pollution, genetic modification. We're kind of winning that battle here in Europe at the moment with keeping GM out, which is fortunate. The quality of our drinking water, industrial pollution, EMFs, Wi-Fi in the microwave, geopathic stress, which would be the energy stresses that happen from underwater streams. I have seen that affect people. It's always one worth looking at if you have problems with insomnia, because sometimes our bed can be lying over these lines, and it can affect our sleep. So sometimes something as simple as moving a bed can actually improve sleep. Now, I would have always been skeptical about these things, but I've seen it time and time again with patients. So after a while, you're like, yeah, it really does do something, and actually it was affecting me with my sleep as well in my own house. So I learned that lesson myself. Radiation, air quality, and the media. So I think it's important too that we realise, so just say there is any genetic illnesses lying in the background for our families, that we can control that, because there's something called epigenetics. And Angelina Jolie was in the papers a lot recently about having a double mastectomy because she carried the gene for, I think it's the BRCA1 gene, which would increase the risk of breast cancer. And we talked about this a lot on a lot of the groups that I am to do with health and healing, because she actually, even though we may have those genes that increase the risk of disease, the disease only expresses given our environment. So if she did everything to rule out toxins from her environment, if she ate well, and if she believed that she had control over this, she probably wouldn't have needed to get the double mastectomy, because she could have reduced her chances anyway. But at the same time, if she really believed that she was susceptible to this gene, she probably did take the right course of action for her. But a lot of us, when we know more about epigenetics, would have thought, really, did she need to do that? It was quite a barbaric choice, but we all have free choice. So this is just showing again how epigenetics, or how important our environment is to health, and the health of our gut bacteria are incredibly important for that of our whole bodies. They help regulate the immune system, and they've done quite a few trials on athletes looking at probiotics and the levels of beneficial bacteria in the gut, and they are linked with health and susceptibility to coughs and colds after a marathon. So if any athletes have had lots of courses in antibiotics, I'd always recommend that they take a course of probiotics, just to put the right balance of the gut bugs in so that their immune systems are strong. They help keep the gut healthy. Also for foreign travel, if anyone is going abroad and there's food and poisoning risk, for example, India or countries that our guts wouldn't be quite used to, I always recommend bringing probiotics with you because that help prevent you getting food poisoning. I had a couple of athletes, Europeans in Russia a few years ago, and they were all on the phone, Andrea, we have food poisoning. In other words, they were running all over the place, and they didn't know how they were going to solve this. So I sent them into the kitchens and I told them to get some kefir and as many herbs like garlic or rosemary as they could get their hands on, because that's all they had available to them, and that's what they did, and actually they were all able to compete. So it just goes to show that if in our guts there's always a battle of the good bacteria versus the bad, so we need to try and keep that population in favour of the good bacteria as much as possible. They help digest our food, they help support our brain health. I often see with IBS patients, a lot of them, the root cause of their symptoms is actually that they have an imbalance of beneficial bacteria, but you'll often see depression as well. So when we start to work on the gut, their mood starts to improve as well, because there's a huge link between the brain chemicals in the gut and that of our mind and our emotions.
Can I just ask something there on the probiotics, Andrea? When you say a course of probiotics, do you need a prescription for that, or is there a particular ones that you would recommend? Or very often you see them in the full of sugar little
the yogurts.
Yeah, that type of thing. So is there something in particular that you would?
Yeah, I like a good quality brand that would be kept in. Most of them would be, you'd find them in the fridge section in the pharmacy or the health store. Polyquin I like, Metagenics I like, and Jarrow I like. But you're looking for ones that have lactobacillus and bifidobacterium in them mostly. That would be helpful. A good high dose, so you want them in the count of billions rather than just millions. And I would say take 1 or 2 every day for about a month.
And does it matter tablet form or liquid form? Is there
capsules would be better. Tablets always have to get squashed together, so they have fillers in there, whereas capsules are going to be more pure, so they don't have any other additives in there. If anyone has had IBS or gut problems, I would say to them maybe take a course of up to 3 months, but to keep changing over to different brands of probiotics as they go, because we found that that's a little bit better at replenishing.
I had the girl has had worms.
Okay.
So should she be taking probiotics now? I've treated her, say, with
So you use the Vermax for her.
Yeah.
Has she had many antibiotics?
No.
No. No, she's had worms. I guess it's no harm. Does she have any problems with
She's
allergies?
complaining now, but it's still a bit sore stomach.
Sore tummy. And with the Vermax, did you do just a 1 dose?
I've done 2.
You did the 2nd dose then? Your tummy is sore. Try the probiotics. Then and how is she generally in her health?
Really well.
So her energy's fine and
She's tired at the moment.
okay.
Probably just put one down.
I guess, and a lot of the food strategies that I talk about here, try her on those as well.
Okay.
Maybe looking at wheat or dairy, that they could be affecting her a little bit. And it's no harm to do a course of probiotics, just to boost her up. If we have any stress, our probiotic levels tend to drop. Contraceptive pill as well would tend to drop our probiotic levels. So for women it's important even, every now and again just to do a course, just to keep our levels up. Because they have found as well, which is really interesting, that the different types of bacteria in our guts can be related to our weight. They have found a few bacteria that tend to pull out, that lead to us pulling out more calories from food. And it's interesting because one of the gut tests I do with my patients, it's a more expensive one, so I've only done it a handful of times. It actually has shown up whether they have those bacteria that we call the obesity bacteria. I don't think we can fully blame them though for our weight problems, but it is quite interesting. They help the manufacture of nutrients, some of the B vitamins and vitamin K. Allergy control. If people have sinus problems or allergies, I always go back to the gut. In fact, I always go back to the gut anyway. With everyone, I look at the gut first. Heart health, they help control our cholesterol. They're involved with detoxification. So if I'm looking to improve someone's body composition, and in Ireland we'd all tend to hold more weight down around the hips and thighs, supporting the gut and detoxification through the gut is helping to get rid of the weight around this area, because it's all linked to environmental toxins and estrogens, which is quite interesting. Cancer prevention and drug resistance. There are certain bacteria which can mean that drugs are less effective. So this was where they, I'm just asking the question, are gut bugs important for athletes? And because the probiotics, the good bacteria, have an effect on modulating the immune system, I would say that yes. They did look, I tried to find some clinical studies on PubMed, which is where all the proper clinical studies are listed, but see, for any clinical trial to happen, it costs a lot of money. So most people that will put on a clinical trial are trying to sell a product, so it was actually that a lot of the studies were actually done using the different brands of yogurts, like Yakult or the Actimel, yeah, because they would be owned by companies that would have huge financial resources. So I would say that above and beyond this, I believe absolutely that the probiotics are very, very important. But they were looking at other strains of bacteria than the ones I would have in my probiotic, where we know for health they help. So I would believe that there should be more research out there again, but it just costs so much money to do these trials. It's usually drug companies that can afford it. But they did find with Lactobacillus GG that it shortened the duration of GI episodes in marathon runners. They looked at Lactobacillus caseoshirota. That's one of the ones in a probiotic drink, and I think it's Yakult, but I may be wrong. It's one of them anyway. They found that it reduced the frequency of upper respiratory tract infections in athletes, and they felt that might be due to maintaining secretory IgA levels, which is a helpful antibody in the gut. And in the last one, they looked at Lactobacillus fermentum, and they found that substantially reduced the number of days and the severity of respiratory illness. So yes, there's some research there.
So what's the link between the respiratory system
and the gut?
And the gut?
I feel, you see, 70% of our immune system lies in the gut. So it's not that they're directly linked, it's that our immune system is healthier and stronger, so we're less likely to come down with a respiratory tract infection. And I guess the one thing that marathon runners get after a marathon tends to be respiratory infections, because if they're not paying attention to their recovery, they have a vulnerable window. So, but the thing is, and what I find I have a problem with is clinical trials, they never take athletes doing everything. So they may have looked at a load of marathon runners and given them a yogurt, but were they actually doing proper recovery? Did they take branched chain amino acids before their event? Did they do everything right? Probably not. So it's a case of everything adds a little bit more. But if you take an athlete and do a clinical study on them and they're not doing everything, but you give them one little strategy, you tend to see an inflated positive response. Does that make sense? But it still is significant. It's just, what if you took a really, really healthy person? But the more you can do, the more you're going to add to how healthy you are.
Are you talking about taking probiotics consistently or just every now and again?
Well, the clinical research would say take them consistently. I don't think so. If you can imagine the gut is a bit like a lawn, and you want grass in there, not weeds. I think once you can keep the gut really healthy, it's a case of maybe just topping it up every now and again. Marathon runners do tend to have a lot of problems with their guts, but I feel a lot of the time that's because they're not optimally healthy. But when you are doing a lot of intense running, you do tend to see inflammation in the gut, and sometimes you'll see gastric bleeding in marathon runners. But again, I would wonder, is that because they're not optimally healthy? So I don't feel the need to take them all the time, but I think keeping on top of it is important. And I do recommend probiotic products as opposed to yogurts, which are full of sugar and not quite strong enough. And a lot of the strains in the yogurts, even though they're coated in there, tend to be temporary resident. So you eat them and they're helpful because they're a different strain of bacteria as to ones that we would have in the guts all the time. So
when you recommend a course, then is it you take it for a day, 2 days, a week?
Say about a month, yeah. Just to repopulate, and again, if you've had a lot of gut problems, it could take 2 to 3 months using alternating different probiotic strains. So this is just a quick checklist. It's not actually that quick because you know me, I'll go on and on forever. But it's just every time I hit certain questions, just check, are you doing these things? And then I'll go into, at the same time, talking about the strategies around that. So a lot of athletes, particularly the runners, tend to skip breakfast. And it's very important that we eat in the morning before training. A lot of people find it difficult though, so I will touch on some strategies with that. And I don't know if anyone remembers the ad for Weetabix. Has anyone seen that ad? Have you seen it? It's great actually, because your man, the jockey, eats Weetabix, and instead of doing the race on a horse, he runs it because he's had his Weetabix. I don't recommend Weetabix, by the way. So breakfast is very, very important. It helps raise our metabolic rate, so we tend to see breakfast eaters tend to be slimmer. It's very important for body composition, hormone balance. When we eat first thing, it's important to eat first thing in the morning to regulate our blood sugar levels, and when we don't, it significantly raises cortisol, which is a stress hormone. Also, skipping breakfast tends to have a negative impact on our thyroid. So it's important to get breakfast in. It's important for cognitive function, it's important as fuel, be that for training or for work. It's important for our immune systems, it's important for liver detox function, and it's important for cholesterol balance and heart health. But it's also important what we eat for breakfast. So this is just an example that scares a lot of people, especially women, because we tend to be the worst at breakfast skipping, to save a couple of calories from one meal, and then we tend to overeat later. So sumo wrestlers specifically skip breakfast and they'll starve themselves for as long as possible during the day, so that when they eat that one massive meal in the evening, they're more likely to store it as fat. And obviously it works.
Andrea, what's your thoughts on training on empty, so for fat adaptation? And
Yeah.
A lot of this, well, the new research is showing that if you get up and do your training session first thing from sleep, we'll say.
Fasted. Yeah, when we train fasted, we have low blood sugar levels, which means that we're going to more quickly tap into whatever stored glycogen is there and then body fat burning. So yes, we do burn more body fat when we train in a fasted state. However, to maintain blood sugar levels during training, the body has to raise its cortisol levels, which is a stress hormone. So it is a significant stress on the body. So what I say is, if you're an optimally healthy athlete that's well rested and hasn't got a lot of stress in their systems, i.e. they're fresh and they're not overtrained, it's going to work for you. But most people are already in a state of overtraining, or where the adrenal system and their cortisol balance is all assways, so that when they do those morning fasted sessions, they're going to more quickly burn themselves out. So I would say to someone, we need to first look at the state of your adrenals, and a good check for that is looking at energy balance. Athletes should be waking with really good energy in the morning and should be going to bed feeling very, very tired. And an early indication of fatigue in an athlete would be a shift in cortisol profile. So we tend to see someone waking tired and going to bed wired, which is a lot of people. So I would say for most people, we need to get you optimally healthy before we start doing that. And then when you're optimally healthy, to keep the early morning fasted training sessions to maybe 1 or 2 a week, and then with other sessions to have something. Or you could fool the body a little bit, and for your training session take amino acids and glutamine, so that at least you're supporting the body a little bit, or just having something very small, so you're still not pumping in a load of sugars. That makes sense? So eat before exercising in the morning, because our blood sugar levels are going to be low and our liver likely to store and depleted because we fasted overnight. It improves motivation, focus and concentration. It reduces muscle protein breakdown, which would be muscle loss or catabolism. So whenever I say catabolism, just think of us cannibalizing our muscles to provide energy for the training session. So if we did too many fasted training sessions, we'd actually start to eat into our muscle tissue, which isn't good either. If we eat before exercise, it reduces the risk of overtraining, illness, or the number of missed training sessions. Yeah, another point where I was talking about cortisol is if you train on a fasted stomach, when cortisol is high, our immune system is suppressed, so we're in an open window of catching something as well. So if you are doing morning fasted training sessions, to get something in very quickly afterwards. Supports leaner body composition. So just say someone was doing too many fasted training sessions, or were doing too much training when they're tired, because it's upsetting the cortisol balance, they tend to just get fatter. Because cortisol will lead to weight retention in the abdominal area and will cause muscle loss on the extreme. So it's kind of undoing the hard work in your training. That's why getting the training balance right, more is not more. And certain key sessions may be done low to stimulate further metabolic gains. So that's like what I was saying with being able to do certain sessions in a fasted state. So you enjoy your morning run far better when you're optimally fueled, and you'll reap far greater metabolic adaptive benefit from doing so. This is just a little bit of a study showing how eating a protein-rich breakfast reduces food cravings later on and prevents overeating later. So it is important to eat breakfast in the morning, but with protein, and we tend to be leaner when we do that. A lot of endurance athletes don't have protein with their breakfast. In fact, I'd say that's the majority of us, and that's just the way we've been told by marketing. Kellogg's, I think the Kellogg's campaign in Ireland has been better and more successful than any country around the world, because we all have breakfast cereal in the morning, and it's not the best way to start the day. So most of these breakfasts here, there's no protein in them. So this is what breakfast should look like on a day when you're not training, when you are weight training, or on a non-carbohydrate loading day. So if you're going to the gym and doing a strength session where you're just getting up and going to work, this is the type of breakfast that I recommend for the morning. So protein, so that would mean red meat, nuts and vegetables. That's actually the best breakfast that you can have, but it really rattles people because it's completely different to what we're used to. However, if you look at our Eastern Europeans, a lot of them would have a breakfast like that in the morning, where they're having their eggs, their meat and their tomatoes and their cucumbers. So people find it head-wrecking to try and eat a breakfast like that, but when they start eating that way in the morning, they never go back, because your energy levels are just so much better. If you need a little bit more carbohydrate, then to that you could add some oats or some other cooked breakfast grains. Now I tend to recommend the gluten-free ones, so we're looking at millet, quinoa, buckwheat. Or you could add some sweet potato or potato to that, rice or some fruit, like a bowl of blueberries, blackberries, some melon. Like I said, I tend to prefer the gluten-free grains because a lot of us have gluten intolerance that we don't realise we have. So to that I would add a tablespoon at least of fish oil, and these are brands that I tend to recommend down here on the bottom because they're better quality. If you're going into the health stores, Paradox and Eskimo-3 tend to be the ones that you see. If you're going to a practitioner or online, then there's Barley's, Carlson or Poliquin, and Nordic Naturals as well is a very, very good one. This one here is a great oil for people that tend to hate the taste of fish oil, or for children. They've emulsified it and it tastes just like lemon sherbet. And you can put it just on a spoon or into a smoothie and you don't notice that it's there. And recently as well, a client of mine was telling me, oh, I add my fish oil to my salad dressings and it tastes amazing on salad. And I'm thinking, really? And he said it to me a second time a few months later. He's like, did you try it? And I was like, no. So I thought I really better try this. So I made salad dressing last week and I put some salmon oil in, and salmon oil is actually very, very strong. And you know what? It actually does work. It tends to mix really well with the greens. So he was right. So that's quite a handy way to do it as well. But
you don't recommend capsules?
The problem with capsules, it's not that there's anything wrong with them. It just, you have to take a lot of them to hit the same dose. So if you imagine how much oil is in a tablespoon and how much oil you'd have to put from that tablespoon to make all the capsules, with capsules you tend to need, 9, 10, 12 capsules, but there's nothing wrong with them if that's the only way that someone can take them. There are some slightly stronger capsules. The more EPA are good, but you need to maybe double the dose on what they recommend. And Nordic Naturals do some good strong capsules as well. The Pro Omega D is very good, and you only need 2 to 4 of those as well. But things like Eskimo capsules, you need to take an awful lot of them.
Is there any substitute for the red meat then? When you say red meat?
Yeah, I'll come on to that in a slide.
That's the nicely flavoured one they're called.
The nice one, that one is Ideal Omega. It's Barleans is the brand, Ideal Omega. Barleans, so Barleans. When you're eating, and this goes with any meal, try not to add too much fluids to the meal because it dilutes down your digestive juices. So I would say if you can, try not to really drink anything with your meal. But if you do want to have something within the next hour, green tea, herbal tea, water, or black coffee is okay. And with coffee, I try to keep that to about 1 a day maximum. So other proteins, if you find the red meat a little bit too much, would be eggs. So having them whole, white only, or egg only. Meats, so chicken, turkey, occasionally bacon if it's good quality is pretty good. Fish, smoked salmon or mackerel, canned fish. Like I was saying, with the good quality bacon, but it needs to be good, and it's virtually impossible to get good. Have you ever been out to Caroline's place in Currachase? No, they're very good bacon out in Curragh Chase. I think they sell it in the corn store shop in town as well. But they've done studies on bacon, and when it's good quality, the fat content is mostly monounsaturated fats, like olive oil. So that's good news. Nuts and seeds, and then protein powders. So you can either go for like the whey or the casein, or there would be the vegan protein powders, and I'll show some slides on better brands there. So we could make a power shake or protein pancakes, which would be adding protein powder into our pancakes, or making a power porridge where we're adding some protein into the porridge and stirring it up is another way to get a little bit more protein in. And to that, I would definitely recommend adding your vegetables or a greens juice. So berries, cherry or melon, nuts and seeds, non-dairy milk. So if you can try and keep away from too much dairy, and using non-dairy milks like nut milk, coconut milk, rice milk are all good options, not soy milk. And then when you're allowed to have more carbohydrates for your energy demands, then you're looking at dried fruits or cooked grains, sweet potato, rice, or your gluten-free grains. So there's some pictures just to make things, I know the colours are great. Can you?
Why did you say not soy?
Soya is very processed, but there is substances in soya that disrupt our hormone balance, which is especially negative for our thyroid. Also, it tends to be negative for our estrogen balance, especially for young children where they will be more sensitive. Also, they found soya to be very high in substances that upset our digestion, and also very high in manganese, which is quite toxic for us, so it's not a great food. And it's quite disappointing because even when I came out of nutrition school, I was, we were all told soya was a good alternative to dairy, and unfortunately, we're just told a pack of lies. It's not. There's a very good book written by a lady. It's called The Whole Soy Story, or The True Soy Story. Her name is Kyla Daniels, and that explains a lot more. But no, it's not great, unfortunately.
What about goat's milk?
If you can tolerate milk, kind of dairy, goat's milk, good organic goat's milk would be good. So that's just examples there of a couple of different breakfasts where there's different varieties of. You've got your salmon or your eggs with your avocado, meat with an egg. You've got your little homemade burgers with some veggies and blueberries, or a boiled egg. These are great, especially for children, because you can send them off in the car with them. They'd be like little egg muffins, where you're just putting egg and vegetables and maybe a bit of bacon in them if you wanted to, making them into a muffin so they're easier to eat. And then you've got your scrambled eggs and veggies. And then other quick ways. Actually, that's a better picture of little egg muffins there. You've got your meatballs on top of salad, your greens juices, and then canned salmon would be handy as well. Or some avocado with some seeds to get in your healthy fats. So then if we have days when we need more carbohydrates, so when we're in intensive training or we've got an endurance event or we're carb loading, what you want to do is try and bring in more carbohydrates. So you can add those in, making pancakes and adding some fruit, or sweet potato pancakes with some vegetables, or having some baby potatoes in your omelette, or making homemade breakfast bars. And I have some links of websites and some recipes for you in the talk here. There's a load of different recipes online. If you're looking for recipes tending to put paleo in front of it, so like paleo pancake or paleo bar, you'll tend to come across some really good websites with ideas. Having a fruit platter on the side of an omelette, or making sweet rice, where you can just cook up your rice and add in some, for example, mango and raisins, or coconut milk, or adding in some chopped dried fruit, and having it all in one is quite a handy breakfast as well. I use that strategy for carb loading myself because I found it hard eating the volume, so I just tended to throw everything into rice. I was either making sweet rice and putting all the dried fruit and a little bit of protein and everything into one, or I was making savoury rice and putting hummus and a little bit of veggies, and I was just loading it all into one, because I don't know if you find the same, it's just hard to eat the volume of food.
Any particular rice then?
I like the short grain brown rice, or the basmati. I like it when it's really sticky, but some people prefer it fluffy, individual. Fruit salads, but you can grill a fruit, or you can stir fry fruit, which makes it pretty tasty. Or having cooked gluten-free grains like your buckwheat, your millet, your oats or polenta, or some stewed fruit as well. So I think I have pictures of them all there. That would be an example then of like a homemade bar, and that's a more savoury rice breakfast with an egg on top of it. And smoothies tend to be much higher in sugar, which is why I don't tend to recommend them day to day unless we need that amount of sugar and carbohydrates. But for carb loading, they're handy because you can throw a load in. So there you've got your fruit skewers. That is everything. Sorry, the pictures are very bad quality. That would be an omelette. It kind of looks like a quiche because it's made quite thick, but instead you've got potatoes in there and there would be no base. And again, you've got more bars. You've got, that's quinoa porridge. Who's this swimmer from Australia? He's got a really good cookbook, and his is gluten-free. Yes. He's got a good cookbook, and he has quinoa porridge in there. I think you can find that recipe online. And then again, that would be an omelette with just potatoes on the side, and that's a sweet rice mixed there with everything in there and a bit of cinnamon. Cinnamon's really handy to balance blood sugar levels because I find carb loading, my heart starts to go crazy, even though I do keep it gluten-free. So I try and put cinnamon in there just to slow the sugar hit because I'm not used to it.
So what does the cinnamon do?
It slows down the absorption of sugars so that you're not getting quite a sugar hit all at the same time. Now the effect wouldn't be massive, but it still does help a little bit. So problems. So what if we're not hungry in the morning before training, which is really common? You know, some people are getting up at 6 o'clock to go for a run before work and they just don't feel hungry. Well, if that's the case, I'll say just try and have something small, even if it's just a few bites of a banana or a few pieces of dried fruit or even a little bit of a homemade health bar and having a little bit of protein. If you can't manage that little bit of protein, then at the very least maybe take some branched-chain amino acids and glutamine. And you can either take them as powders or as a drink form or as capsules. But just getting that little bit of something in means that when you're running, you're not causing muscle damage. If you can tolerate a little bit more, the paleo pancakes can settle in the tummy quite well as well. Or some people find that liquids are a bit better, so they might make a smoothie. But for other people, they might find a smoothie tends to come back up, which they don't want. So it's finding what works for you. So there are just some options of lighter things for pre-training if you don't tend to be hungry. We've got our smoothies, some dried fruit, pancakes, maybe amino acids, or that one there is an amino acid drink, which can be quite handy. The ROS one is pretty good. You've been using that for golf. How do you find it? The taste of it? And then there are some bars that would be healthier. I like Cullen. The paleo bars or the Cullen bars are good because they're dairy-free and gluten-free. Or that's a bar that is available in America that's actually really well made, but I don't know if they're exporting into Europe. You might be able to find them on eBay. And then there's another company that one of my brothers put me in touch with, Bulk Powders in England, and they've got very reasonable prices for amino acids and different products. Very good prices actually. A lot of people skip meals. It's very important that we eat regularly throughout the day to maintain good energy levels, but also very important for body comp. Another big mistake, especially when we're doing a lot of training, is that we think that once we're putting in the training, we can get away with rewarding ourselves, and there's a limit with what we can get away with. So I believe that as much as we can, eat healthy, your body thanks you for it, and then occasionally having a treat. But you see a lot of people that put in a heavy training session and then they're in the coffee shop having a muffin or a bagel, and you're just sort of undoing all your hard work. So, if we do too many food feasts, we end up in trouble. And that actually, this is a big problem for endurance athletes with carb loading, because if we have a lot of events during the season and we're overdoing the carbs and we're treating ourselves in the recovery, we'll tend to see the weight sneaking up. And you'll often see there's a lot of endurance athletes that are carrying a little bit more weight than they should be. And I think part of the reason is that we believe we need more carbohydrates than we actually do. And I think that's pushed by the dietitians. They are telling us we need a lot of carbohydrates, have more toast, have more breakfast cereal, have more bars. We really don't need them. And I started seeing that very early in my career when I was working with Munster, and I was looking at the amount of carbohydrates we should recommend to them and what they were actually eating, and I just saw there's no way I should be telling them to have 7 to 10 grams of carbohydrate per kg body weight. You know, we don't need as much as we think we do, and I think it's getting up in more protein and more fat that's really, really important. And then on the days that we really need more, doing a little bit of a mini load with bringing in more carbohydrates and then going back down to training a little bit less on a little bit less carbohydrates. And there's research there as well to show that training with slightly less carbohydrates actually stimulates our body to adapt more, and then just bringing up the carbohydrates for key sessions. And I think it keeps your body comp better as well. This is just an example of what is in, we go into the coffee shop and we see the skinny blueberry muffin and we think, oh great, I'm going to have that with my coffee now. But they're not as guiltless as we are led to believe. So the claim is 90% reduced fat with less than 1% saturated fat. Now even those extra early starts can be enjoyable and guilt-free, but that little muffin there has 329 calories in there and 68 grams of carbs, a lot of it sugars, and very little protein. But the thing with all of this carb bomb is you're going to be hungry in an hour or two again because you haven't given yourself fuel. Your body's very smart. It's going to keep asking you for more until it gets what it needs. And our bodies need vitamins, minerals, protein, healthy fats. So if we're eating empty calories, even though we've given ourselves the calories that we need, if we're not giving ourselves the nutrition that we need, we're still going to be hungry. And that's why we have such a problem with obesity, because people are eating food that isn't giving them nutrition. So they're hungry. So another mistake I tend to see in my endurance athletes is just getting the macros wrong. And when I'm talking macros, I'm talking about the balance of carbohydrates to protein to fat. We tend to be way overdoing our carbohydrates because we're eating too much breakfast cereal, breads, pastas, crackers, too many fruit juices, energy drinks, and poor quality sports bars. We don't tend to be getting in enough protein. We need protein with most meals and snacks. Even though it may just be a smaller amount, it's important that it's there. With protein, variety is very important, not just a load of chicken and a load of turkey. We need to have a lot of variety. If we overeat any one protein, very quickly we'll run into problems with food allergies as well. The quality of protein is very, very important. Organic, when we can, and not processed. And protein before, during, and after training is very, very important. And the final big mistake I tend to see is our fats. I still see endurance athletes and a lot of athletes following a low-fat diet. Fats are really, really important for health and performance and a lot of other things which I'll talk about later. So I tend to see a huge deficiency of the healthy fats in athletes and a belief system where fat is the enemy. And there's a big thing in the endurance scene, especially in triathlons, about getting the body fat down as low as possible. And the athletes are eating very, very few fats, and it's leading to a whole host of health problems, which will also affect performance, because when the fat is too low, testosterone drops down, and testosterone for athletes is incredibly important. I tend to see too much processed fat then coming in from salad dressings, mayonnaise, processed margarines, and then the fats that would be hidden in foods. Not eating enough veggies or fruit with most of our meals and snacks. So vegetables are very, very important. I tell people to aim for 3 colours with most meals and at least 6 portions every day. So our goal for fruit and veg is about 10 portions, and as many of those from veg as you can. Fruits are very high in sugar, so we do want to try and get them mostly from our veggies. So get them in whatever way you like: salad, stir fries, soup, steamed veg, casseroles, chopped up crudités, roasted veggies, and fresh and dried herbs tend to really pack a lot of power in their antioxidants and healing content, so try and squeeze those in when you can. So why do we eat all these fruit and veg? Why can't we just take it in a tablet? Well, there's a little more to fruit and veg than I'd say we even know about, but they're full of antioxidants, they're full of vitamins, they're full of minerals and trace elements, they're alkalinizing, they're one of the few foods in our diets that helps to restore pH balance. And when we're training an awful lot, we build up a lot of acids in our bodies, which tends to move our body more into a state of mild metabolic acidosis. So to rebalance that with our veggies is important. They're low calorie, so if we're having a plate of food that doesn't have vegetables on there, we're eating a load of other foods that are higher in calories, so it's important that we have them there to fill up the plate. They're full of fibre, which helps with detoxification and body composition. They have a lot of amazing things in there which do some incredible things in our bodies. For example, ellagic acid, which would be in watercress and strawberries, helps with liver detox function and cancer prevention. Glutathione, which is one of the most important antioxidants in our bodies, is found in our fruit and veggies. Certain vegetables like broccoli, cabbage, kale contain a substance called DIM, which detoxifies estrogen, so that helps us get rid of fat around the hip and thigh area, and also reduces breast cancer risk. And then in curcumin, which would be turmeric, or ginger, they have very powerful COX-2 inhibitors, which are basically anti-inflammatories. A COX-2 inhibitor would be ibuprofen or Nurofen. So ginger and turmeric act as powerfully as those medications to reduce inflammation. They contain a life force and energy in them, which is helpful for our overall body energy. So try and get those veggies in. So again, a lot of people are like, but why can't I just take a supplement? Well, whole foods create something that's a greater effect than the sum total. So they took an apple and they looked at how much vitamin C it has. And an apple only has 6 milligrams of vitamin C, which isn't very much when you look at a Boots vitamins tablet, which will say 500. But when they looked at the other antioxidants in there, like quercetin, procyanins, catechins, and epicatechins, they found that the actual activity of it was equivalent to 1,500 milligrams of vitamin C. And all of these different antioxidants in there synergize similarly, so the sum total is greater. Following a yo-yo diet, so it's very important to try and be consistent as possible, because what you tend to see, and I notice it in especially sports where there's a definite season, is that people just go completely mental in the off season and then they spend the first month trying to get back into some form of decent shape. But if we're being healthy all the time, you won't really lose your fitness even if you take a couple of weeks off, because your body's just really, really healthy. So consistency is important. So the big mistakes that I tend to see really are all around the training period. So it's very important to eat before training. And often I'll find that someone's had lunch at 1:30 and then they're going for a run at 5:30. At that point their blood sugar levels are really, really low, so it's important to eat something before that session. Because if you don't, your cognitive function is going to be affected, and really your brain is your central governor when it comes to sports performance. It'll affect your physical performance and your biomechanics, so you're more likely to run with poor form if you're running on the low, and more likely to risk an injury. You're going to affect your pace. They found our body is incredibly smart, so if you go out to do a long session and you haven't eaten optimally, your body knows it, and your pace will be limited. You can't push through it. Your body just knows what you have in the tank, and it's going to affect your endurance as well. You need to have some fuel there in the